Hello and welcome back, everybody. I am here today with a challenge rising star, a champ slayer, they call him. I'm talking with Kyland Young. Thank you for joining me today. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I do want to start off this interview with a theoretical question. I'm not trying to point fingers or anything, but my one question that I have is, how many number ones do you think a player can have in a game like the challenge?
I think typically they can have a number one female and number one male, but in a season with only one winner, even that concept would come into question, I think. For me, that's why it was so funny when there was one night at a club where I literally had 8 people tell me that Michelle was their number one. And like most of them knew that that was the case. So that's why I was so confused. I think that's when I had so much trouble, is because I was, if you're talking to people who are dumb, then who make dumb decisions, let me rephrase that, who make dumb decisions, then it's like a lot harder to use, logic and reasoning with them.
Yeah, because I was about to say that too, because we get a confessional from Berna where she says that Michelle is my number one, but a lot of people think that she's their number ones. And it's like, yeah, I mean, clearly she's coming into a game with somebody that she just played on a season called Ride or Dies with, and that person is in the game. I mean, to me, and I've talked to my Patreon about it, that they're like confused about how many times the word number one has been used this season to describe random people. Yet if you have the same person or 6 people have the same number one as each other, that person can't have 6 number ones where you're lined up like that. So
that's where my frustration came in as well, because I had that same question to everybody, almost everybody. And I would talk to them about it. I'm like, you guys realize that isn't that doesn't make sense, like, long term. The other thing about the challenge that I think is unique is that that the final has multiple people in it. Usually, anywhere from like 6 to 10 people, depending on the season. So it's okay to not be someone's number one. Someone could not be your number one, and like you could not be their number one, and you could still have their back, and they could still have your back. Because, there might be 8 of you in the final. So if you're like, yo, I got these, that was me walking in. I was the only person, as I've said before, that had literally no one that I had ever played in the house before with. Mm-hmm. So every single other person there, every other contender had played at least one season with someone else there. And I hadn't. So I came in knowing, I'm like, you know what? Nobody will have me as their number one. But if I have Horacio and Olivia and Nerys that have me as like their number 2 or 3, that's not a bad place to be. Like, that's something. Yeah. That's some sort of lines. And that was what I thought I had going in. And but as far as having, if you have one person that has, like I said, 8 different people that are openly calling them their number one, that's like, it is a frustrating conversation for me to have, because I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. And they couldn't see it or didn't understand it.
Yeah. And you bring it up, and I wanted to ask you about this. You do come in at a huge disadvantage, not just number wise, but like friendship wise. How did you maneuver through the game? By the time we get to episode 16, you do have a very close relationship with very strong players in the game, like Horacio, Nerys, Olivia, and Zara, and then Olivia's kind of in the fold here, as we see.
I mean, honestly, I think it did kind of come from the fact that I had spent very few time with a lot of the people, and 0 time with most of the people. But I had met Nerys once or twice. I was probably closest going into the house with Olivia. We had spent some time together, and Horacio came over because I went in town for the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was in Arizona last year. And so I was hanging out with Olivia and her sister and some friends for like Super Bowl festivities, and Horacio came into town as well. So we were hanging out. Me and Horacio, we did some workouts together. I think really quickly we just clicked. We were like, yo, pretty well in sync. And that was funny. That was why actually, I'll tell you this, people, they resurfaced like a photo of Olivia and Horacio holding hands. And they're like, oh my gosh, like what does this mean? It was funny because like I took that photo, like, and it was a joke. Like it wasn't anything. I personally don't think that there was romantic feelings for either of them. I know that's been debated, but I think it was just more of like maybe a territorialness as far as a relationship that was there that may have felt threatened, and we can get more into that later. But regardless, yeah, me and Olivia were probably closest. And then, like I said, I knew she had Horacio, so I was like, okay, I'm not her number one by any means, but like if I could be, like I said, her number 2, which kind of was the understanding that I had. And then, and Nerys, I thought it was somewhere in that fold of like, Team USA. And she was one of the few people, like I said, that I met. But I feel like me and Horacio just kind of clicked, like competition wise, I think competitiveness, like kind of just, we have a similar competitive nature and philosophy around competition and a drive to be better and to push ourselves and stuff. We bonded, over like David Goggins and other stuff. So I think we came into the house and it was funny. I've mentioned before how in the first week I told him, I was like, very quick checking in on everybody. I'm probably the only male in this house that actually wants to run a final with you. And he's like, maybe. And I was like, yeah, we'll see. It could be, it could be some others like a Kieran or Manuel or somebody like that. And it just quickly became apparent that was accurate. It was just me. So, but me and him, I think locked in kind of from that mentality. And because Jay was his number one guy because they had the connection from Rider Ducks. But I feel like that mentality, it just was very clear to him that I meant it. And that, I think, allowed us to build a bond. So then, as Nerys and him were getting closer, I think that started more conversations between me and Nerys. And I grew up with all sisters, so I can have like the gossipy girl conversations as well. And so me and Nerys were like asking me about Horacio, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, trying to facilitate that matchmaking. So it's like, so I think we just kind of, it was very organic. And you mix that organic relationship of being friendly, and then also, just kind of sticking to our words. Like, like people tripped out about when Nerys voted the burn vote for Emmanuel earlier when we were voting for Jay. But like that was completely understood. Like it wasn't a surprise even at the deliberation. We talked about it beforehand and we knew, we're like, no, Nerys and Jay are real friends. And Nerys prioritizes those friendships, those relationships, and she likes to stick by what she said. And so she couldn't say Jay's name. So we knew that going in. And that's something I respect. And it's not necessary in the game. That's something I always try and tell people. Like these games, you don't have to play that way. But I do, and I like to play with other people who do. And I don't think it's wrong for anybody to play differently. It's just not how I play.
Yeah, and I think also, I've seen some similarities between you and Horacio. Well, first of all, you like just to spend time with people that you actually want to spend time with and actually have conversations with. But two, you say how you feel. Like there's no, I don't want to say fake, but there does seem to be this like reality of like people will say something kind of like Jay in episode, this past week's episode 16, where he's like, I only got one vote. I don't have a plan. I'm just going to save whoever I can save. And then he walks out the door to talk with Mariah, and he's like, we got to go. We got to get these two in there. Like, I have a plan. And it's like, there's that kind of double talk where I don't think that necessarily relates to you and Horacio. And that kind of brings me up to my next question. And I mean, I hate to criticize people's strategies because they made it to the final 10 in this game. But I think one frustration that I think me as a fan, I don't want to talk about all the fans, but one frustration I have as a fan is somewhat the flip-flop double talk. It seems like that happens in this game where it's like Corey having the conversation with Raven saying, I'm playing a scared game, and then doesn't do anything to try to course correct or do anything different. Colleen coming to talk to you because for 4 episodes, she's frustrated with her place in Jay's alliance, yet never really does anything for that. And then Olivia being frustrated with Horacio, then coming back to being partnered with him, and then ultimately not choosing Nerys or him. Do you think that that's a natural part of the game, or do you think that is like somewhat the inexperience of the players in this game, not knowing exactly what they want to do or the moves that they want to make? Maybe they're playing too safe. Now that you've played the game and has been in this cast and also have done 2 other reality TV shows, is that like natural that there's so many like branches of thinking between everybody and doing A or B or not even doing anything at all? I
think it is natural that there's going to be different strategies because I feel like it's for different people. The one conversation I know that's come up a lot that I stand pretty strongly with on Big Brother, Survivor, Challenge, both USA and the MTV, is that I don't think that it's me personally, I don't view it as a testament to just make it to the end of the game. I think it's making it to the end of the game with a chance to win, because plenty of people can make it to the end of the game and people just drag them along because they know that they have no shot of winning. So it's kind of like, well, then why did you come? So as far as like different people having different strategies, I feel like another big part of it is different players have to play a different way. And so for me, it's kind of like, I understand, like, whenever I say, someone's playing a scared game or safe, like, I'm never saying that they're playing a dumb game. I think that usually they could be doing something that completely makes sense. And for them, they can be a very smart move. It's like, but it doesn't mean that it's not scared, or it doesn't mean that it's something that I hold, in high esteem. And that's why me and Corey, like, I think get along so well, even though like we have some moments going back and forth. It's because like Corey is straight up. He's like, I am afraid to run in a final with Horacio. So I do not want him there. And I'm like, that's honest, because you have the rest of the guys in the house that won't say that. They might say that in their confessionals. They might say that, after the fact. But in the house, we had very personal conversations where some of these guys were like, I'm not afraid of running with you guys in a final, only to watch their confessionals back to back to back of them saying the exact opposite. Jordan said it well in like one of his, in I think Rivals 2, in like the reunion. He's like, I'm going to make money in life. I'm going to figure out a way. Like, this doesn't have to be the place. Like, yes, I do want to win, but then I also, how I win matters. Like TJ said it, what type of champion do you want to be? And I think that, that could be, pride or egotistical or whatever, but like, I do think that matters. Yeah, it's just different personalities and different values. And I don't think anybody's wrong for thinking differently. I just feel like this is how I think, and this is what I want to do. But I understand if you are someone else, you might have to play a different style of game. And for me, it's just the hypocrisy of it that bothers me. When you see someone that says both things and they're just like, oh, well, yeah. So, long answer, but lots of thought.
No, I love it. That's why I wanted to ask the question, because I feel the frustration just watching it, but then you're in the game trying to gain some numbers, trying to gain something out of like thin air. And then all of a sudden, when push comes to shove, it just does not happen. So I wanted to know your thoughts on certain aspects of what people are doing. It just seems like in the long run, it feels like such a short-sighted game at a certain point. But then again, people are in the final 10, and I refuse to call it the top 10. I'm going to keep on calling it the final 10.
I like this language. This has to be one of the weaker showings of a final 10 that I think has ever been in a season. One of them.
Yeah. I mean, I was in my Discord, and we were talking about it, and I go, the wording that I can't believe they kept in the episodes was, if you want to be a champ, you have to beat a champ. And right now, after episode 16, the last person to have beaten a champ from this season is Michelle. Technically, Jay is still in there, and he beats ET on season 35. And that kind of goes into my next question of like, you were there. Like, we're limited to what the edit is able to show us. Is there something we're missing from any of these final 10s that are doing something in the game that we're just not seeing, or the cameras aren't picking up?
Let me think about it. Well, first, one comment on what you said. I definitely have that same thought where I was like, TJ says this every single time. He's like, to be the best, you gotta beat the best. To be the best, you gotta beat the best. So I'm like, that first elimination against Darrell and then against Brad, I'm like, wow, like, did I punch my ticket to the final? Is this gonna be a twist or something? Is there, does this matter? And then I'm like, just please don't tell me we end up with a final with no people that have beat a champ, because we said that was necessary. So that will be, interesting to see. But like you said, there's very few people. So the odds are definitely getting slimmer and slimmer of there being, a finalist that's beat a champ, or a winner that beat a champ. And so, yeah, that is such an interesting part of this season, and frustrating. For sure, I will say, it is frustrating because they emphasized it so much. I thought it would mean something. But as far as like moves that might be done that we're not seeing, like, I don't know, because it's like, it's one of those things where, so let's look at like a Colleen. Like a Colleen was somebody that you mentioned, and Ed, either one of them really, that were making moves that could move them further in the game. And Ed, even Ed, like outside of this. But what I think is interesting is like, we've seen consistently that their loyalty is not rewarded by that alliance. And so I think that was a difficult part for an annoying part for me. It was like, after Ed was walking down to that one deliberation where we have the stalemate, and he was like, I'm just going to vote for myself because it's already done. And I was like, Ed, shut up. I've been working very hard to make sure that doesn't happen. And so then afterwards, I was like, yo, we got you. And he's like, I'm not going to forget it. And I was like, I appreciate that. And I didn't know he meant I'm not going to forget it, but I'm not going to do anything about it either. I thought I'm not going to forget it meant like I owe you one or something. It clearly did not, but that's, it is what it is. But it's just like these people continued to stay at the bottom. So them moving, or, Colleen moving forward in the game, like, doesn't feel like a result. Like if she had voted with us or she hadn't voted with us, nothing changed. So I can't give her credit like, oh, that was a good game move because it allowed them to move you up in their rankings. So that way they kept you and did this. It didn't. She was still in the bottom. She was still the second to last pick there. It did nothing for her. So like, that's why I'm like, I can't even say it's a smart move because it didn't change anything. Same thing for Ed. Same thing for a lot of them is that like, they weren't maneuvering anything that you have to acknowledge circumstances. And I think that's where I run into an issue. Like, I saw, I've seen some people like popping up on social media, as we've seen. And it's just like, you can be good at the game and just acknowledge, like, Kieran's probably good at a lot of stuff. And he got pulled from the draw instead of Emmanuel. And like, Jordan was probably beating anyone outside of Horacio in that game. If Emmanuel's luck of the draw, they continued. That doesn't mean Emmanuel is not skilled, doesn't mean he doesn't have a lot of good things, but it's just like, you can say like, hey, I am good, but yes, I got lucky. You can say both, and that could be okay. So it's just like, for me, when people like refuse to acknowledge that stuff, then I'm like, now you're selling. From my opinion, your inability to have humility, makes you less of a great player than you probably could be.
I think it's just frustrating because it's like we've talked about, there's 7 people that are just like chilling out that I'm kind of trying to figure out, like, outside of the numbers and voting, what can I pinpoint on like a move, a moment where you can hang your hat on that if any of them were to like make it to a final or to win, it's like, oh, well, there's a specific moment right here that I can see that they switched on a thing. I think
that of the people remaining, I kind of give some credit to like 3. I'm obviously Nerys, all the credit in the world.
Yeah.
She's been navigating a very hard line and has kept her word. Like with Jay, she didn't vote for him. With Olivia, she didn't vote for her. So it's like she kept these words consistently, has performed consistently. Even, she came in like, my favorite comment. She came in afraid of swimming. She had the scuba Nelly necklace, and she like showed it, and somebody was like, "Oh no, she's gonna drown!" And like, I was dying. But she didn't. She didn't get lost in the water challenges. So like so Nerys, and then obviously she beat me and Horacio. So like, and that's the crazy thing is a lot of people have been like, "Oh, did you guys throw that? Did you guys go easy on her?" Like, you have to remember how badly we didn't want any of the people that were in the house to win. So like, it would not serve any of the 3 of us to not do anything less than our absolute best, just to give us the best possible chance of making sure none of these people win, because we don't want them to win. So like, especially Horacio, of all people, probably one of the most dangerous competitors in the final of our season, if not other seasons. And so it's like, there was just no reason for us to do anything less, because it just like, yeah. So when you really think about it, it's like there's no shot of that. It just wasn't our day, and it was Nerys's, and Nerys is a powerhouse, and people sleep on her, and so. But yeah, so Nerys, obviously, and then Michelle. I think that elimination says a lot. I feel like, of course, and that's when we're also the. I was asking, I think Zach Nichols' podcast about like how much from 1 to 10 did audience interference, affect Michelle, and I would honestly say 0, like, because there was multiple times where everyone, including Jay, was giving her directions and she was completely ignoring them because she's like, I know puzzles better than you guys do. And so I think that she does deserve, the credit on that win. And Cara's decent puzzles. This just wasn't a good one for her. She just, she had an off day as well, but like, Michelle is very good. So I think that her going into elimination was thought, but then at the same time, going back to circumstance, like, it helps that she walked in with 8 number 1s and with more people in the house than anyone else had that she had already played with. So like, I think that, and I feel like she acknowledges that. And that's the only reason why I think I hold a decent amount of respect, is because she does acknowledge that, like, hey, like, I came in with these group of people. And then a move that I think was done that was criticized was Corey with the Melissa and Big T thing. But it worked. Like he fell back in the good graces of Michelle, and Michelle was she was the queen bee as far as like so many of those players were concerned, and that was enough to keep them safe up to this point in the game. And I think that to not acknowledge that would be wrong. So I think that those are things that I saw. Yeah, the rest of them, I just don't see any moves that I can really call out. Like I said, the thing with Colleen's is that none of her moves made any difference. And the rest of them didn't really have moves.
And I think that you bringing up Corey really does show a testament of how well he was able to find himself back in the fold, because he was down in the sand. And then after a while, it was just like Michelle was going to bat for him every single time, saying that he's definitely not going down. And I think that is a really strong test. We just haven't seen anything to where it was like, it's just implied that he's totally good, which I think is, I don't know, a little shame on the edit a bit. I really do hold the edit accountable for a lot of this stuff that it was just like, I don't know. It just seemed weird that we were told things were moving and grooving, and then we didn't see too much of it. Like 1 week or 2 weeks, Olivia is mad at Horacio because they're not talking. And then all of a sudden, 5 minutes into the episode, she's like, I'm leaning on his side now. And it was like, when did that happen? We didn't even get to see that.
Okay, so I have the exact answer to that, because what's funny enough is, and this I hadn't even talked about yet. Well, first off, as far as things not being shown, that's because outside of the things that I've already discussed, that mostly I was doing, or Reese was doing, like there just wasn't that much gameplay because of the nature of the format. The format was, normally eliminations matter. They're impactful. This was a season where you could throw in, if you had a majority alliance, you could throw in the same people and there was zero repercussions. Because the format of the game was that even if they won and came back, they could win, as we saw, with me and Horacio. If we didn't win, we were in the same. And if we won, we had no say in who went into elimination. So because the rest of the house, it was me and Horacio versus every other male in the house. So we had no say, just numbers wise. That I think changed a lot of the game, like didn't allow for a lot of gameplay because it was just such a structure that, obviously I'm biased, but like I think that the structure didn't allow for a lot of gameplay moves to be made, like strategic moves. So anything significant or noteworthy or interesting. Like I said, a one hustle for that one stalemate vote. So what happened before that vote, where Olivia came over, I won the mini final, and we decided, put in the Horacio. And I was like, okay, like this is so risky, but like it is good for us because we get to force the rest of the house to turn on each other. And I got my feels a little bit. And I was like, man, like, Horacio's back down there. I'm safe this time. We've been going back and forth with pretty much this. And we were so close by then. I was like, would he have been in a better position if I wasn't there? Got my feels, got emotional about it. And I was like, the only person who could understand me about feeling guilty for putting Horacio in a bad situation, I was like, Olivia probably has some guilt from the injury, which is an accident. It's not her fault, but I'm sure that she could relate. So I talked to her. She set me straight, which I do appreciate. She's like, no, like it would just be him. Like he would just be by himself. Like these people never wanted him to move forward in this game. So it would have just been him going in as many times as you've been going in. And, he would have had one less friend, which puts him at, 0 male friends instead of 1. So that, was, I appreciate that. And she was like, honestly, I think that you're emotional because you have been stepping up and you have been caring and you have been, you're not a quiet friend. Like, and I've been a silent friend who hasn't been standing up for him and hasn't been standing up for you guys. And I want to change that. And that was the day before we did that vote where she finally came over and voted with us, to help us get that stalemate. And, and that was her, like I said, she was in the middle. She was in a very safe spot where she didn't have to do much. And she wasn't. And then she stepped up and was like, you know what, I'm going to vote with you guys. And we're like, see, we told you she is with us. Like she always has been. And she finally stepped up and did it. So that was a little bit of a roller coaster for us emotionally, to go to where we end up. But yeah, that was where that switch happened.
Wow. I'm kind of
they didn't blown
show
away
by that. No, yeah. We definitely didn't see any of that. Speaking about Olivia, she gets called up relatively early in episode 16. And then everything goes to hell, basically. What is the vibes and decision? Will it follow her throughout her challenge career because not only is she turning on like friends like you guys, but I mean, even Corey, who's not necessarily with y'all, Corey even says if she could do that to a friend, what is she going to do to somebody that's just like an acquaintance, just hanging out? Like, do you feel like this will follow her for seasons to come if she were to come back for seasons to come?
Yes, I do. I think that this is a game that, unlike most other games, reputations travel. The challenge is unique. Even when you think it's Survivor, it has a decent amount of returner players. Like Big Brother rarely has returners. Survivor has a lot of returners, but these people don't socialize really as much. And also that game's so quick too. I think that's why it's like 3 weeks, whereas this one's 8 weeks to 8 to 10 weeks depending on the season. And people of the same age, people that even if we have diverse backgrounds and stuff, we still have something in common. That's how we ended up here. So we've seen, I think we saw it with like Fessy, for example, and when he went against Nelson, his friend at the time, and that stuck with him. People were like, you can't trust him, you can't trust him. And obviously I think it seems like they were able to mend that relationship to the point where in that last season, funny enough, with Nelson and Olivia, he chose Fessy to save Fessy over Olivia. So that was a funny, moment that clearly Fessy did something to rebuild that relationship. And so it worked. And so people can rebuild, but we've seen, it'll stick with them. And like same Millionaire Mitchell, she hasn't done a lot of shady stuff besides the one time, which is, I'm not even gonna call it shady because it's debatable depending on, everyone's perspective for when she took the money. And same thing with Johnny, and people will hold it over them. So yes, the reputations go with people. I think this one will go with her. And, we saw Corey's comment, we saw Colleen's comments, and we saw TJ comment. So, which I think was huge and crazy. And it was even sharper. He had more to say there than he did that was shown. So I feel like, yes. And then as far as what happened, it really started like the night before, because you saw me and Horacio were like, all right, well, me and you are probably going in no matter what. So let's see if we can save the girls, Olivia and Reese. So we're in the club, they're having all those conversations, and this is the heartbreaking part that they also didn't show, is Olivia came up to me, and I think that this did happen. She came up and was like, hey, I got a deal. And we're like, cool, like you and Reese are safe. She's like, no, I got a deal to save Reese and Horacio. What? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I can't get you. I tried. I was like, no, that's fine. If you could keep me out of the elimination with those two, that's everything. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was like, wow. Honestly, it's hard for me to even believe that that's possible. But she's like, no, I feel pretty good about it. And I was like, all right, cool. I guess conversations happened afterwards that deteriorated. I wasn't made privy to them. So me and Horacio are like, what? That's crazy. And I remember I was telling Horacio, I was like, yo, if she has a deal and they actually agree to it, you can't pick me. I don't want you to ruin that relationship for them. I don't want you to ruin your reputation. And he's like, no, I'd have to pick you. And I was like, all right, well, I appreciate the loyalty, but we went back and forth in a little bit, but I understood because I was like, no, I would pick you too. I get it. Then we go to that elimination. There's chaos happening beforehand. I pretty much salve it because me and Horacio are like, we're going to elimination virtually no matter what. And probably with Nerys. So that's why I was so annoyed with everyone. Jay, Michelle, anyone who's talking about, it's a split second decision, we can't control it, whatever. We asked for the uniforms for all three of us. It wasn't supposed to be just me. It was supposed to be Horacio and Nerys, but there was they were washing them and they couldn't get them in time or whatever. So that's why anybody was saying we didn't know it was going to go that way. I was like, how did you not? Then you're dumb. How would you? Who would you think? That's why I asked. They're like, TJ asked, he's like, well, how did you think it was going to go, Jay? And he's like, oh, Corey was going to save her. And that's when I was like, well, who was going to save Corey? It's walk that train, because anything you say is going to sound stupid and illogical and completely unreasonable. But that was the only time I was surprised, because I always assumed Olivia would be at the end. And so when Olivia got called early, I literally in the scene, my head jerks. I was like, oh my God, did she do something? I was wrong. I wore this uniform for nothing. This is crazy. And then she immedately says Mariah. It was stupidity, and I've said this to her, and she agrees. And I go back and forth in it because it is hurtful. It is hurtful. Like I said, that was the closest person to me, so it wasn't just hurting them; it was also hurting me. And there was just no reason to follow through on what they told her to. I think that's why it hurt, because it was just they couldn't do anything to you. If you didn't follow through on what they told you to, and instead decided to save, and she like has talked about, I was friends with Jay and friends with Michelle. It's like, yeah, but not the same. Like that's not, especially what just happened 2 days earlier. Like with Nerys picking you over Horacio. Like, let's not pretend that that those relationships were like, no matter how comparable they were. Like Nerys kind of said it. That seat was never supposed to be anyone else's but Nerys's. Like, if anybody else's, it should have been Horacio's. But like, it was never supposed to be. It should have been Nerys's always, especially after what just happened. And I think that's why it hurts, because there was no repercussions if she didn't. So it wasn't even like self-preservation. Like, it was self-preservation to say yes to the deal, but it wasn't self-preservation to follow through on the deal. And I think that she did realize that. And as she said, like, they didn't show that after the safety chain happened, she did actually ask. She's like, hey, TJ, like, can I switch places with Nerys? Like, I'd rather go into elimination with them instead of her. And and he's like, no, that's, you guys know that's not how the game works. And so I'm not gonna say it was an empty gesture because it wasn't insincere, but it also was like, it was too little too late. And I think that's why it hurts. And like I said, it shouldn't have needed to be done. And I think that's why that whole moment was so heartbreaking, because it was just unnecessary. Like, there was nothing, there's nothing to be gained. But hopefully, maybe Jay and Michelle will reward her for her loyalty to them and in the future, and they'll keep her safe as a result. I guess we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah. Also, with you bringing up that she was like, oh, I'm friends with Jay and Michelle, they were already saved technically. So, I mean, you just go on with the plan. I mean, everybody that you're friends with is technically safe. How
cool would that have been?
Yeah.
For her, even for her, it would have been cool, because she would have been like, hey, I know what I told you, Jay and Michelle, but obviously this is my ride or die, and this is my best friend. I gotta save them. I'm rocking with them. And like, it would have been an epic, like, for everybody. But things happen as they should, and it is what it is. I don't think it was malicious. I just think that, and I feel like she's been pretty good. She catches herself when she's making excuses. Like, she tries to make excuses for it. A split second, but it wasn't split second. We saw them talk about it at the pool, and the pool is a 20 to 30 minute walk away from that decision. So it's kind of like, that's not a good excuse. And she catches herself when she makes it. So, as far as like, can I trust her in the game? No. Do I think she's a bad person? No. I think that it is just now, maybe she has to rebuild it like Fessy, and maybe she will be able to, or maybe she won't. But, time will tell.
I do want to get into some of your, because from the launch special, and you've said it throughout the entire season, that you're a fan of the challenge. And you did some research from going back from the launch special, that you did research on the show. And I mean, you're showing it off right now. I mean, just throwing out some like Millionaire Mitchell stuff, talking about Jordan from Rivals 2 and everything. I've done exit interviews, and I've gotten to a point where there's certain people that you can tell, like, okay, they've seen some of the challenge. And then there's some people that are like, I don't think you watched any of the challenge, not even like your own past seasons or anything like that. I mean, I'll be honest. I've had some people actually say they've never watched even their own season back. How much did your research help you on, say, your season? And when did you start this research? Did you do it before going on USA or after USA, before coming on to the MTV version?
So I did start after Big Brother in prep, because that's when I found out about the challenge. I didn't watch any reality TV at all, except for Big Brother, which I'd only started watching 3 years before I was on it. But I became obsessed with it immediately. So I was watching I was studying Big Brother, very similar to how, let's say, the challenge, like from the first episode that I watched, I started taking notes that week. I was like, wait, this is a game. This looks amazing. Then I ended up in the Big Brother house. Xavier and Big D were talking about the challenge. And I was like, wait, what is this? This is a game with like even like more fun, like physical stuff? Hold on. So then we got out, and they're like, yeah, we might be able to have an opportunity to be on something like that. And I was like, because they brought in Big Brother people, I was like, what? So then I start taking notes on that, or I start watching that right after. I only get to watch a couple of seasons. And actually, they had even told me, they're like, I don't remember if it was casting or players or whatever. They're just like, hey, for USA 2, if you're new to the show, probably just watch the last couple of seasons, because it's a more modern take on it, and it's going to be different. And so I just I tried to watch as much as I could, but that was like post Big Brother is a whirlwind of life. And then, and it was only a couple months before we went and shot, a few months before we went and shot, USA. But then after that, I was like, okay, I had a fun time. didn't do too bad as far as individual performance. And so I was like, you know what, hopefully I'll have new opportunities, and I'd rather be prepared for an opportunity and not have it, than have it not be prepared. So that's when I started doing the deep dive research and going back to older seasons. I only went back to 10 initially. And but all I was watching though was the eliminations and the challenge, and just kind of taking notes on them. And I do think that helped for sure. As far as like, even if a lot of them weren't synced up, and there was occasional, the one, wow, I'm blanking on the season now, where they did have like an end of line repel thing, and they did have, like, there was stuff that helped here and there. But what's funny is I hadn't watched the social, watching something can only give you so much. You can watch all the football in the world. It doesn't make you a better, receiver or whatever. So I was trying to also make sure that I was training specifically for those, and, integrating what's it like to do a puzzle, in your room versus a puzzle like after you run up a mountain. And so I was trying to integrate different types of varied trainings and stuff. Specifics, I'm like, what are the muscles that are needed, or the reflexes or whatever. I always prioritize. I say go muscles, not show muscles, unless you're, Horacio and you have both. But the the thing that's funny though that I didn't watch, that now I've actually been going back and watching more of the social stuff, and I didn't social gameplay strategy wise, just more social dynamics, because which is always fascinating me. I think because I'm on the spectrum, I feel I've always missed certain social cues and social dynamics and things that people say. And so I was like, you know what, this is actually worth diving into and studying a little bit. And what cracked me up though is watching Invasion of the Champions. When the champions came in, I was like, yeah, all these kids, let's cheer just for the champions, screw them all. And I was like, oh, that's how everyone feels watching us in 39. Got it. I got it. I'm with you guys. Totally makes sense. So that's been an interesting experience for sure. So I think it helps in general to watch. I think all of it helps to watch, and just to understand, like I said, everything from, the conversations and remembering that, I'm not I'm sensitive, but I'm not super emotional, and emotions tend to make more literal logic leaning decisions. But it's always good to remember that a lot of people don't do that, and maybe work backwards from there. So that's what I'm trying to do more of.
I'm trying to think of how to word this or where to go from that, because I there was a lot in there to unpack. And
fair.
As a fan to watch back over the show, not just because I'm obsessed with it, but because one, the puzzles can go back and forth, but also when you're watching past seasons and then seeing everybody do their thing or know somebody's weaknesses, even if you're just watching the daily challenges and eliminations, you get to see the tendencies of how people think, or their motor skills, or how well they can do under pressure and stuff. And I feel like, at least if that helped you in any way, that could have helped you in, say, the eliminations, or when the champs do come in, you can see okay, well, this one's going to be math. I know CT's good at math, or something like that. Or this person isn't the best at puzzles, or anything like that. But then you have these eliminations that are kind of crazy wild, like the Firewalker elimination against Darrell. Take me through that kind of aspect of doing an elimination like that, where you really can't train for it.
I think that is such a big part of the game, is there's so much that you can't prepare for. And Johnny Bananas is, one of his things that he says a lot is that he's I think that these, my performance in these games just continues to prove that I'm just really good at a lot of dumb shit. And it's that's what so much of the game is it's dumb stuff that you can't prepare for. Even you can climb all you want, but if you're not punching through the drywall when you're climbing, we've seen that competition has very little to do with people's climbing skills. There's an equalizing element to it, but then there's also a performance experience sort of element to it. So what's funny is, you look at, I was talking to, once again, Zach Nichols about it, and he had, he's had, some hall brawls with people that are a foot smaller and 50 pounds lighter than him. And I'm I would rather do that 100 times than do that ball rolling one against Huey. I'm pretty good at figuring stuff out, and I kept a good lead on that. But that one, you have no idea what's going to happen in that one. Whereas, if I'm going to pole wrestle or ball brawl with somebody that's much smaller than me, I'd much rather do that. So it's funny, when there are complaints about we don't like this, where it's like those are the ones that are the most varied and the most uncertainty about like who will actually win. And I'm not saying that makes it more exciting or anything, but it is make it more difficult. And and so that one with Darrell was interesting because and to be fair, it was decent. We took over an hour probably doing that because and there was a lot of core and leg strength because it was a very heavy device that we had to move around and stuff. And we're wrapped up in the fire suits, so we're sweating and that thing's pulling against us and stuff. So it had a decent amount of physical demandingness to it. And that was one where I went in and I was like, damn, as far as the stuff that you can't prepare for, being ready for stuff you can't prepare for is a skill. And that's a skill that Darrell has 10x experience on me on. So I was definitely concerned. I was like, you know what? Since neither one of us have done this, the person who has more experience figuring stuff out is going to be concerning. And he's one of the legends. So it's a crazy part of the game.
Out of all the players that, if you were going to play in future seasons, what's a player that you haven't gotten to play with that you would like to play with and you think that you would vibe with?
Well, that's the crazy thing is my experience is so unique that I did USA 1 before they brought in all the vets, and then I did 39 where they didn't bring in any vets except for those eliminations. So I've barely gotten to interact with most vet players.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's actually that's kind of wild.
Yeah. There's my asterisk where everybody, is if I have another opportunity, they're like, oh yeah, how's he do with real players? That's already the talk that you see. And so well, I guess we'll find out. I don't know. Yeah, as far as players, I don't know. I mean, I'm competitive. I want to play with everybody. But who do I think I vibe with? I have a feeling me and Jordan will vibe because Horacio said that he and Jordan vibed on the same stuff that me and him did. Just loving to push ourselves, loving competition, all that. I mean, me and Laurel, I think are that same connection, kind of have that same thing. I think that's why the same way that Horacio vibe with them, I think I do. But people I haven't met at all, I mean, I don't even know. I'd love to see. It's everyone. I'm a fan, so I want to play with everybody. And who do I vibe? Who I won't vibe with is I probably won't vibe with a Shane or an Amanda or people who like to who enjoy the drama side of it, who love to get in those sort of fights. And I have my moments of snapping back, but typically the response I get is, "Kyland, you're too nice. You're too nice. You're too." You saw even with Jay yelling at me, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna walk away because and a lot of that is just because I feel like I have a lot of empathy in the sense of I see why people are upset and I understand. And I'm like, you know what? They're just dealing with stuff, but I don't want to add to that or whatever. So I think that some people that anyone, and anytime, I also don't like bullies. I don't like people being mean just to be mean or rude just to be rude. So anyone who does that, I'll probably can get into it with. But then who knows? Because I tend to, Melissa is a firecracker, very intense, as we've seen. And people are like, this is the least intense we've ever seen her because I'm a de-escalation sort of person. And that could be the same thing. I could get along perfectly well with a Shane or Amanda or whoever, or Ashley or whoever it is. So I don't know. I could be. I feel there's so many variables there, but I want to play with everybody. I want to all the champs, all the OGs. I want an opportunity to play with them and see what it's like. Me and Devin, I think, click on a lot of we had some good conversations at Challenge Mania, and his thoughtfulness around the game, similar to. It's a Wes, who I haven't gotten to interact with at all, but when I read his posts and stuff and watch his gameplay, he has a lot of thoughtfulness that, they're not just smart, they're insightful and thoughtful as their approach from what I've seen. And I think that that's hopefully something I'm trying to, follow in that line of thinking. And I think that we'd get along in those regards.
I do want to ask one last question. And we kind of touched on it a little bit, but you're very much into the social media atmosphere. You're very connected with a lot of the fans. So you've seen some of the posts that I'm sure people have put out there, mainly some of the negative stuff about maybe the casting, the ratings of the show, and all this other stuff. And kind of what is your take, or what would you like the fans to maybe take into account before maybe jumping into tagging some players or the show and having too harsh of criticisms?
I mean, I think of a few things. I feel like also I thought about this a lot because of Big Brother as well, not my personal experience even so much as just the concept of, 24/7 live feeds, people being examined. And, a lot of times people throw out like, oh, I saw somebody's true colors. And I feel like there's something to be said about how people handle a pressure situation. People use an analogy, if you squeeze an orange juice comes out because that's what's inside. Humans aren't oranges. Mm-hmm. We have so many psychological studies of people in high stress situations applying different circumstances, adrenaline, solitary confinement, all these things that they act out of character is what we know is the truth. So when people, like to sit on their pedestals and, be judgmental of others in terms of like, oh, well, a sentence that I think about a lot is people say like, if I was you, I wouldn't do that. It's like, no, if you were me, you'd be me. That's how being me works. If you're my collection of genes, experiences, brains, all these things, that's how that person works. And that's so when I watch these shows and I see someone do something and I'm like, that's a dumb decision. I probably wouldn't have done that. And that could be so true. Like you probably wouldn't have, but you weren't there and you didn't experience it. So it's kind of like, I'm like, most people also haven't experienced, having this many people examine them, and not just examine them in general, but examine them while playing a game. And I love Wes's comment where he said, people look and they say it's just a game, but it's not just a game. It is a game, but Monopoly doesn't affect whether or not you can pay for your family's benefits. That's an underlying factor that no matter how much you try and distance yourself from it, it's true. That exists. And so it's somewhere in your brain that like, hey, this matters. And I think about terms like betrayal. Like most people do not experience betrayal because they're not in situations to experience betrayal. Like outside of infidelity in a relationship, people just aren't in situations where they get to have somebody betray them. And for me, it's like I said, like me and Olivia don't sit in the same place as Nerys and Olivia do right now. But I understand why. Mm-hmm. And it's not just because we're different types of people. It's also because we have different relationships, different experiences, different things that happened. And that's why I don't think, the conversation I had, with Olivia was like, she was upset about like, she's like, hey, I feel like Nerys is responding to this thing in a way that I wouldn't. And I was like, yeah, but at the same time, you did something that Nerys probably wouldn't. So it's like everyone does different things in different situations, and it doesn't make it right or wrong. But I feel like everyone, from the players to the audience, it's like, I say, like, think about the grace that you want for bad decisions you make and try and give that to other people. And I think that it's, at the end of the day, holding more room for grace to your ability, and your ability may not be, because you may be reminded of this terrible, and that's something that happens a lot, is I tell people I ask people to think about, like, what do you actually want? Because sometimes people don't realize it and they just want to be upset, and or they're being reminded of, like, they're watching someone do something and they're like, oh my gosh, like, this person is horrible, because they're thinking about when something like that happened to them in their life. And so they actually don't want anything from you. They just want to be upset because they didn't get to be upset, or because they're still upset about whatever happened to them. So what I say to people is, like, when you see something on the show, try and think about, like, okay, what do you want from that person that would actually make it right? Because sometimes you don't want anything. You just want it to feel something. And that's okay. It's a TV show. People get to do that. Like, you're not wrong. Nobody's wrong for, feeling that way, but you're talking to people and you're talking about something that you can't possibly understand without having lived it, the experience. So as long as you know that, as long as you're like, hey, this is just how I feel, I like to pop off, I like to do whatever, then, by all means, go with God, do what you do. But, if you could take a second and think about that, and then, just remember, like, I think just remembering, we're all people, and most people haven't had that experience, and to put out, there's a vulnerability there. And what I would say, if you want to be upset at someone, send it my way, because I actually, it doesn't affect me the same way it does a lot of people. So I'd rather take that brunt of it for my friends and even my non-friends, people that I just feel bad for. Martin Luther King, dark hate can't drive out hate. Like, only love can do that. And so it's like, if you're upset at something, like, and that's another thing I tell people. I'm on TikTok every day doing lives. I tell almost every day doing lives, and there's a lot of Jay hate. Like, oh, I want to go tell Jay how I feel. I'm like, Like, how about you spend that same time to tell the people that you like what you like, give them their flowers, the people that you like. Like, don't spend that extra time there. Like, it's not going to serve anybody. Yeah, so I don't know. Those are things I think about. These are humans that are it is a game, but it's not just a game. So understand that these feelings are deep for a reason, and yeah, there's a lot of run-on sentences there. But those are things I think about.
I think that even with run-on sentences, I think that is a perfect segment to end on, because I think that some people need to hear it. I mean, this is a reality show and we get very invested in. I mean, I myself do on review and recaps, and sometimes I say stuff that by the time I put it up, I'm like, maybe that didn't end up the way I wanted it to sound like. But at the same time, it's like, I think remembering everybody is just human. They're doing their best in this game. We can not like something, but let's not go past a line that maybe crosses into like you were saying, hate.
Well, it's funny that you said that though about yours, because that's actually like several compliments I give you on your show. Like, one, consistency. You're very consistent with the show. I have a podcast. It's very hard. I'm putting on YouTube, I'm working with people. Like, your show is so consistently put out there and promoted and everything. You guys do a really good job. I just want to compliment you for that. And then also on your commentary, I think that's something you do very well, is you just provide, I feel like, a lot of commentary, decently objective compared to a lot of people, which is like pros and cons, but like, I think you do a really good job of presenting the information as information and not, letting it come off, and which isn't a problem for people who do if that's their show. But I think that your show does a really good job of that. And I definitely want to commend you on all aspects of your show.
Oh, I appreciate it very, very much, because I try to do that. I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but there's some points where you get 17, 16 episodes in, and then it's like, okay, the veil is falling.
Hey, you sound good, Berna. We all hit the line.
But speaking of your podcast, I want to give you, as we're wrapping up, I want to give you the chance to shout out your TikTok, your podcast, where people can find you.
Okay, so I'm Kyland Young on most social. Like Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, except for TikTok. I'm Kyland.Young. I am probably most consistent on TikTok. I go live almost every day. And I try and answer as many questions as I can there. Maybe we do battles because I think it's competitive, and I find competition anywhere, and I love it. And so yeah, anyone's welcome to come there. Instagram, same thing. And then the podcast is Connections with Kyland. We released one season like 2 years ago, took a hiatus, and now we're back. We just finished filming half of the second season, going to release those episodes coming up here. And then working on some other stuff. Me and Horacio are working on a project that's not announced yet that we're excited specifically to the challenge community. It's like a one-off sort of, a limited series, we'll call it. And then for the Big Brother fans, I'm working on something else. With AfterBuzz is a studio production company, and yeah, so a lot of different things coming up, and yeah, all of it will be acknowledged on my Instagram, on my TikTok, on my Twitter. So you can follow me there for the updates as things roll out.
Oh, sweet deal. I mean, I'm getting excited about all that stuff. I mean, hearing you and Reese getting paired up together to do something. Sign me up. But thank you so much again for joining me today, spending over an hour talking. I really, really appreciate it. I loved your insight, and hopefully we'll see you again very, very soon on another season of The Challenge, or just in TV in general.
No, I really appreciate it, man. It was a fun time here. And if there's ever anything in the future, like, I'd love to chat with Kyland about this, like, I'm down. I love having conversations. I'm just a big fan of, these shows and love talking about them. So reach out anytime.
All right, I'll hold you to it. But thank you again, and I hope you have a great day.
You as well. Thank you, guys.